Welcome to the International Civil Rights Center and Museum's 2023 Kwanzaa Lecture Series. On the first day of Kwanzaa, I want to ask, Habaragani, what is the word? Today's word is Umoja, which stands for unity. On the first day of Kwanzaa, our presenters are Reverend Nelson N. Johnson and Joyce Johnson, Executive Directors of the beloved Community Center here in Greensboro. Organized in 1991, the beloved Community Center seeks to carry out Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s dream of building a beloved community in which all are respected, all are valued, and given an opportunity to live up to their greatest potential. Guided by their calling, the Johnsons emphasize in their daily work the principles of truth, equity, justice, diversity, and democracy. They provide leadership among faith groups, organized labor, and community organizations in Greensboro, North Carolina, and beyond. Together, they led the nation's first ever Greensboro Truth and Community Reconciliation process, and now are organizing a statewide North Carolina Truth, Justice, and Reconciliation Commission initiative in response to the growing oppression and divisions in our state and country. Reverend Johnson is a native of Halifax County, North Carolina. After 4 years in the United States Air Force, he received a Bachelor of Science degree in Political Science from North Carolina A&T State University, a Master of Divinity degree from the School of Theology at Virginia Union University, and an honorary doctorate in theology from Apex School of Theology. He is married to Joyce Hobson Johnson, who will join him right here at this counter. Joyce Hobson Johnson is a well sought after community problem solver and organizer. She is one of the first African American women to graduate from Duke University. The Johnsons have 2 children, Akua Johnson Matheson and Ayo Samori Johnson. Reverend and Mrs. Johnson are also the proud grandparents of Elise Jamil Matheson and Nelson Josiah Johnson. On the first day of Kwanzaa, the International Civil Rights Center and Museum is proud to present Reverend Nelson Johnson and Joyce Johnson speaking on the principle of Umoja, unity. To strive for and to maintain unity in the family, community, nation, and race.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the first night of Kwanzaa 2023. I am Joyce Hobson Johnson. I'm here with my husband of over 54 years, Reverend Nelson Johnson, and we are honored to speak with you tonight about Umoja, unity. Unity in our families, in our communities, in our nation, in our world, and certainly in our race. So welcome to the International Civil Rights Museum right here in Greensboro, North Carolina, our hometown.
I join Joyce in welcoming you, and I want to acknowledge the ones who call this into being.
Oh, yeah.
And the ones who work every year to remind us that unity is precious and that it doesn't just drop on us. We have to strive for it and maintain unity in the family, the community, the nation, and the race. I would remind you that those of us who grew up in the United States grew up in a culture that promotes disunity. And find plenty reasons to upload a lot of that on the black race. I grew up in the 40s, and black was not a word that you used to describe a person who was of color. And instead, it was a curse word. You old black something, We had to overcome all of that and to see beyond that and to see at our core that we had enormous dignity and worth and great potential that was being stifled by this disunity. So we had to flip the script. And in one way we did that was to get a slogan to say that black is beautiful, and it's so beautiful to be black. I remember walking down the street in front of A&T State University, and people yelled out of the window, "Why y'all talking about all that black stuff?" But we kept on talking, and after a while, they joined in the talk. And I think that the word strive here is very important. Things just don't change because you got a notion in your head. You have to work for it. And unity is very, very precious. It starts with appreciating the dignity, the worth, and the enormous unrealized potential that we as black people have. And our job is to help draw that potential out. And you can't draw it out by denouncing people based on how they look and based on some false notion that you got from the dominant culture. You can't do it that way. So we have to look for the best ways to affirm that dignity, to help people realize that in spite of what you have heard, in spite of what you have grown up with, that you are a special person with special gifts. Find those gifts and then live into the fullness of your being.
And the reality is that we are at our best when we are in unity. That does not mean sameness. Unity is not the same as sameness. Unity means that your core is being actualized. And when we do that, connected, joined with, in collaboration with, aligned with others, then we have unity. So you can play the best role you can. Perhaps your role is speaking, perhaps your role is cooking, perhaps your role is caring for children, teaching, engineering, whatever. But when that role that you have is actualized in connection with that of other people, then we have the best circumstance. But appreciating yourself and appreciating your community, your family, that is the key to building unity. And that's what we've lived for all of our adult lives together. That's what we have lived for in Greensboro at the beloved community center. And I think deeply that is what most people, despite the divisive talk we hear, the divisive activities we hear today, that is where most people are trying to go. Being our best selves. We can only be our best when we are in a proper relationship, which means a non-dominating relationship, a non-repressive relationship, because I need you, and guess what? You need me. And that's really what community is about.
And when we reach that point, things change. They don't change much if we're pitted against each other. I remember the first Kwanzaa that we helped put on in Greensboro, 1967 or 68. And the leader of that was Barbara Kamara and her husband, Musa Kamara. And we had it in the old White Oak, which used to be a school for colored people.
A Rosenwald school.
A Rosenwald school, which served the interests of the textile interests, a textile mill, because it was built right next to those mills. And you could get out of school and walk to the mill. But I had not heard of Kwanzaa. I had not heard of Malanu Lon Karinu. But I got to meet him and have some conversation with him. And this notion of setting aside some time to actually affirm our own selves was appealing to me. As a result of that, this whole way of putting down black people, which is built into our culture, you know, you're second rate, you got second rate schools, or so they thought, and you're treated that way. I remember very well having to drive from my hometown in Halifax, and there was no place to stop to eat. You had to go around and eat out of the back window, or find a place, and there were few and far between, that served black people, and they only served black people. All of that had to be challenged, and that's why the word strive is so important. It does not go away by itself. And so you have to strive, we have to strive, and we have to overcome some of what we have inherited and not even aware that we're carrying this. And so we need to be very circumspect about the way we treat other people. You know, we ran a homeless hospitality shelter for about 13, 14 years. And the people who came were, how can I say, were dismissed and devalued and treated any kind of way. Well, we chose not to do that. We saw ourselves more than providing a breakfast and a place to shower, but a place to have conversation and about how to help get on with life in a different way, and rejected the need to talk down to people. People were pretty rough sometimes, got in a little fight about somebody breaking the line, but Terry, what's Terry's real name?
Terry Speed.
Terry Speed, yeah. She was running the house, and she had built such respect. All she had to do was to walk out of the kitchen and say, y'all know how we do, just get back in line. Other people would have called the police. What do we need the police for to handle something that can be handled in a vastly different way? And everything we did or tried to do was done in that spirit. And sometimes we call people aside and talk a little bit, and sometimes people help us see something about ourselves. That's the striving part. It's not just you pouring into other people, but you actually appreciating other people as they share their journey. There was a person one day with big hands, and I just mentioned to him, you got some big hands, man, you must have been pugging or something. He said, no, I'm a farmer. And I said, well, that's not, and you do a little farming? He said, yeah. I said, let's start a garden. He said, I know how to do it. And so we turned our lawn into a garden. And actually, people who were homeless came up and helped to till that soil, and in doing so, were affirming themselves and affirming us. So I think we've got to find ordinary but creative ways to be in community with those who have been pushed outside of community, treated as trash, and locked up in jail. So I want to just emphasize that this striving part is very, very important. It just doesn't happen by itself. You have to want it to happen, and then you have to think through how to make it happen. And some of it might be releasing views and ideas that we carry that we think we're better than other people. We're not better than other people. We're just people trying to make it.
And the truth is that we are our best selves when we are in relationship, in proper relationship, which is affirming relationships with others. And I believe that's the main point you're making. I'm thinking about education. We really encourage, I know we did with our children and do with our grandchildren, we encourage excellence, doing the best you can. But along with that, there needs to be some unity in that, because certain people know math very well, certain people know English very well, certain people learn languages. But isn't it a beautiful classroom when people are doing the best they can and also helping their fellow students to do the same thing? Teachers are encouraging that, because being in a situation of unified community, a unified circumstance, that's when we all become the best that we can be. And I grieve sometimes knowing how much we compete in negative ways. Now, I love a good game between A&T and North Carolina Central, or A&T and Winston-Salem State. But ultimately, we're just folk trying to have a good time, doing our best. That's what has to be promoted when we're talking about unity. And that's on jobs and economy. That's on having good housing. That's certainly, as I said, education. That's on having good relationships, wholesome relationships in our community, as we are pushing unified relationships, appreciating the dignity, the worth, the tremendous possibility of all humans.
In whose interest is it that we are confused and divided? Who reaps from that? The same people who deemed themselves better and enslaved us and devalued us still tend to do that. But it doesn't look the same. And we don't have to hate other people. We have to help them see what their flaws are. And in that sense, we try to bring out the best in other people. And sometimes it's confronting it directly, and you have to pick your time. Sometimes it's walking up on it slowly. Sometimes it's using biblical messages. In fact, I got a call today. We were in a meeting, and it was about a black person in Raleigh asking about how to deal with the young white people he was dealing with. And I said that a way to think about it to start with, you can anchor it in this teaching. Love your enemy and pray for those who despitefully use you. And what you are doing is not what it seemed like you're doing. What you're doing is trying to help them come out of the mud without you getting into the mud with them. You're raising a higher standard. And when we raise that higher standard, we're calling people to their best selves. And we think that that's our challenge, that's our duty, but it has to start in the family. It has to start in the community. It has to start in the neighborhood. And then it engulfs the whole race. And I want you to know tonight that as black people get better and grow in our own accumulation of wealth and accumulation of knowledge, there's no way that that will not benefit everybody else. This whole idea of pitting people against each other is nonsense. And that's why Umoja is so important. If we do it in the family, and then do it in the community, then do it in the race, it won't stop there.
All right.
In conclusion, we want to say a few words about our experience of forging unity. One of the best examples was a group of workers who worked at Kmart when Kmart was a large entity in the city, came to us, and the women in particular talked about how they were treated, how they, how people made inappropriate sexual activities, gestures and all of this, and they were paid less than other people in the plant and promoted less. It was us meeting with black workers about how to engage the white workers. But the first thing we had to do was to unite the black workers. And we did that pretty good. We reached out and pulled the clergy in. We pulled their families in. And we built a movement of people and actually challenged the company. As we were challenging the company, more of the white people came on board because it was in their interest. And when we finished with that struggle, which we won and added $6 million to the economy, these same workers, when we were fighting against jailing black people, walked with us from Greensboro to Raleigh to confront the governor. Now, we stopped on the way in Burlington. We stopped somewhere between Burlington and Chapel Hill. We walked through Durham, and we marched into Raleigh. And Hunt said he wasn't going to meet with us, but he opened the door, and we walked in. And we actually got a young man who was given 2 life sentences, three life sentences at 17 years old. And the governor said he would never release him. But one day, the jail doors opened, and this boy walked out and came home. And that's because we built the unity and blocked the racist tendencies by showing that we weren't against them, but we couldn't work with you if you don't understand the situation we're in. So that's a concrete example. We've modeled that actually in different places. In Smithfield, we modeled it. And with the blind workers here in Greensboro, we model it. And actually, every day we model it on some level or other.
Yes, and so there's just many examples of that. When there was a landfill in northeast Greensboro, we were able to get folk together who had what seemed like different interests, but they had interests for justice. They had interests for the health of people living in an environmentally unsafe situation. When young people have been in struggles, we've been able to pull older people together to recognize our mutual interests. So I guess we want to wrap this up by saying, we're not just talking unity, it's a good sounding phrase. We've seen unity. We strive for unity, and we've seen it at work. So we invite you to do the same. As we enter 2024, unity is key.
And actually, it's almost hard to imagine how better we would be if we were united as a race. Because our unity is not necessarily against another people.
Right.
It's a call for you to come out of the jungle and to lift yourself up and act in a better way. And that leads to a better state, a better nation, and a better world. We wish for each of you and all of you a happy, productive, and joyful Kwanzaa season. It's never too late to do what's good and right. And we think one of the greatest contributions we can make is to help each other leave some of our yesterdays and walk together in a beautiful tomorrow.
Thank you for joining us for our first night of Kwanzaa. What an honor to have Reverend Nelson Johnson and Joyce Johnson. What a team. They are pioneers in social justice in this community. The work that they have done and continue to do is legendary. We look forward to you joining us tomorrow, where we'll have Dr. Gwendolyn Bookman presenting on the principle of Kujichagulia, self-determination.